Kia ora no tātou, ngā mihi ana kia koutou. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai koutou koutou. Cam Speedy tako ingoa, so Turangi is my home in the Central North Island. I've been there for a very long time. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. It's such a privilege to come to such a beautiful place. This is my second time. I'm planning to stay a bit this time because there's so much to explore. I'm with my partner Anya, who's my backstop and my rock. I've been asked to talk about some of my stuff, and for me, connection is really important. And as an ecologist, ecology is about connections, and I just want to talk about some of my mahi. I like to start here because this is all of us connected on one living cell. We're all in this together. That's us, one big living cell in a vast universe. And everything that happens on Mother Earth, Papatua, nuku, is a part of who we are, what happens to us. We're all connected. And that's really the philosophy of ecology. Ecology is about relationships, how we connect, and everything is connected. And I've worked with a few species through my career, which has helped me understand those connections very deeply. One of them is our seabirds. And I love this GPS track log of seabirds in the Pacific. These are our seabirds. They come to Aotearoa, New Zealand to breed, but they go everywhere across the Pacific. We once upon a time had over 1 billion seabirds breeding in the New Zealand region. Today we have about 20 million. That's a 98% decline, which is a sheer tragedy. And one of the greatest tragedies is that there's not enough fish in our ocean to feed 1 billion seabirds anymore because we've hoovered it all into our own mouths or exported it overseas, and we're just cleaning our oceans of kai, and our seabirds have nothing to eat. But this just shows how everything on our global living lifestyle, our life raft in the universe is connected. It's such a beautiful reinforcement of that fact. Most of us know the role that seabirds play in the marine ecosystem. As fishermen, we all love this scene, a big boil up, pelagic predators underneath, seabirds on the top, causing the bait bull. It all works together, the whole thing working in tandem. Dozens of species all collaborating, and then all of that burley goes to the bottom to feed the tangere and all the stuff underneath, So, but not so many of us think about the terrestrial role that seabirds play. And you guys have it here with your taiko up on your high country. You still have those taiko. We used to have taiko in the Central North Island too. There's still very strong kōrero within two whareto of taiko in their rohe. The stories of the breeding colonies on Mount Tongariro, the flax ladders that they used to climb on Kiritahi to get up to those mountain birds to harvest them. And there are kaumātua alive today who have grandfathers who used to do that mahi, so it wasn't actually that many generations ago. And as a hunter-gatherer and an ecologist who spent my career in the Central North Island, I have travelled the high country, and I've seen so many things. My eyes are always open, my mind is always open, my heart is always open, and I've seen stuff and tried to join the many dots. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you know. But it wasn't until I went to the Chathams and did some seabird work on the Chathams that I saw burrow structures there in taiko country that I had seen before at home in the Kaimanoa. And it made me realise that the stuff that comes out of the back of both these things is exactly the same. And I really love Chris and Izzy's poster out on the deck there that explains this so beautifully. This is such an important part of the New Zealand terrestrial ecosystem. And for millions and millions of years, this is what's fueled our forests and our plants and animals. There's lots of marine production. It goes in all directions. Some of it goes into seabirds. Those seabirds have to come ashore to breed. And they have a burrow, they lay their egg, and they feed that chick for over 100 days. And it sits there, nothing to do, and all day to do it, waiting for mum or dad to come back with pilchards or squid or whatever. And they're just there all day, feeding our forests. It's an incredibly important part of the recycling of marine nutrient back to the terrestrial environment. We've lost that in the Central North Island, and the forests are dying. The landscape is sick. The nitrogen and the calcium in particular, that renewal of those important life chemicals is declining. And it's really the same thing that happens in the Pacific Northwest. It's just a different provider of the ecosystem service, but it's exactly the same thing. And then in the Pacific Northwest, it's the salmon who swim 700 miles inland, and their nutrient, their marine nutrient, is scattered by the grizzly bears and the foxes and the eagles and the raccoons all through the forest, and the fir forests pick all that nutrient up, and it recycles around and around and around. So it's an incredibly important connection between Tangaroa and Tāne that so many parts of New Zealand has been lost, but wonderfully you guys still have it here, and it's such an important part. Great to see Fletcher setting that taonga species up there as one of the priorities, because it's a really important part of the ongoing survival of your forests and your taonga species. Once upon a time, New Zealand forests were an amazing place. Bird forests, ancient bird forests. They're so different today. This is an AI-generated photo of what a New Zealand forest might have looked like 10,000 years ago. The first one it showed an exclosure plot type image of just a plethora of saplings and seedlings in the understory. And I said, hang on a minute, bro. There used to be 9 species of moa, and they browsed this forest. Are you sure it was this dense? And it went, oh, nah, sorry, didn't think about that. Try this. And eventually I got ChatGPT to generate an image which felt a bit more right to me. Once upon a time, these are the sort of critters that occupied these forests. It must have been just incredible. One of my greatest wishes, if I could go back in time, would be to go back 10,000 years and see this. This would have been, just as an ecologist, this would have been something so special, but we've lost so much of this. And it's so neat to see things like Te Taiao and Papatu being considered for reintroduction, because it's a way of trying to get some of that lost stuff back. Today it looks more like this wherever we go. And we're losing our understanding and our connection because of this kind of stuff that's going on. For whatever reason that these animals got here, we now know that, that probably wasn't such a good idea. And I'm 6 generations out of Scotland, and it was my tūpuna that were part of that thing. I see it as my role as an ecologist to try and help that situation. And in our freshwater ecosystems too, I do a lot of mahi with tuna for power companies who have put structures in waterways and disconnected tuna from their marine environment. So the little fellas can't get up, and the big ones, when they go back to tonga, end up going through a plug hole and get turbinated in our renewable energy systems. We can do something about that, and we are doing something about that. But it's really important that we understand the connection that comes in our knowledge of tuna. They have an incredibly complex life cycle. They're born in the deep ocean trench between New Caledonia and Tonga. They float thousands of kilometres back to New Zealand as larvae on the ocean currents, which in the South Pacific run in an anti-clockwise direction. So it brings them back from those deep ocean trenches back towards Aotearoa. When they sense the fresh water, the larvae swim towards the fresh water, and then they get into the estuaries as glass eels, as little whitebait. And as they're in the fresh water for a period of weeks, they start to pigment and become little algas. And then they can climb right up into the headwater catchments, up in steep waterfalls, and they'll live there for up to 100 years for a big, long, thin wakene. A 20 kilo, 2 meter long, female long, thin eel can be 100 years old. And at some stage in her life, she'll hit breeding condition and she'll decide it's time, and she'll go down to the estuary, hang out there for a week, adjust to the marine environment and the salt, and then boost on her 2,500, 3,000 kilometre journey back to Tonga, spawn and die, and then it starts all over again. there's so many things that can go wrong in their complex life cycle. Ocean currents, sea temperatures, predation. You swim up as an alpha, and 50, 60 years later, you go home as an adult, and someone's built a dam in the way, and you have to go through a turbine to get to the coast, and you don't make it. Or we overfish these big ones. This is such a tragedy. These are all long-finned females that are between 60 and 100 years old, and these guys are selling them for cash. It's just such a tragedy that we turn things into commodities, but you don't know what you don't know until you know. When you know, then you've got to act, and that's, I guess, I see my role as a ecologist, as a wildlife ecologist, is helping people understand what I'm piecing together through my career so I can help with this kind of outcome, because that's not cool. Everything must stay connected to thrive, and that's why I love the kaupapa that Joe has put together today. It is about that connection and our role as people in that process. This is actually a photograph from Pūturu on the ranger's paddock. There's often 100 or more kiriru on the paddock there. There's 43 in that image. This is how Aotearoa New Zealand used to be everywhere. And if we get it right, we might get it back. So that's what drives me, is trying to get that kind of stuff back. And we all have a role to play. Even some of us might not know where our piece fits into the puzzle. I'm really lucky because ever since I was about 4 years old, all I've wanted to do was play with wildlife. That was my thing. It's my superpower, is seeing the connection in nature, that how things interact. It doesn't matter if you don't know where your piece fits yet. It's the fact that you want to try, and I'll bet that you're all here today because you want to try, and you want to try and make a difference. And that's so cool. We all have a role in whatever way, and that's what today's all about. Whenua. This is Panakiri Bluff at Waikato Moana, but I saw the sun up on there this morning and I went, oh, it's so cool. So that just made me connect to this landscape like I have connected in my mahi at Waikato Moana and Kiwi and Nutukaka and Tuna. Whenua, most people refer to whenua as meaning land, but it's actually way deeper than that. Whenua is placenta, and it is our connection to Papatu. And so whenua is about our connection. So when you talk about your whenua, you're talking about your connection to Mother Earth, and that is such a profound and beautiful way of looking at the world. This is the cloud forest at Manawoha, at Waikato Moana. It's something out of the Lord of the Rings, and you can almost see a hobbit behind some of those trees. And for me, working into Urewera with Tuoi, the development of, after their treaty settlement of Te Kawa to Urewera, really speaks to me in terms of that connection. Deliberately, we are resetting our human relationship and behaviour towards nature. Our disconnection from Te Urewera has changed our humanness, and we wish for its return. Oh man, doesn't that just describe what we're all here trying to do? It's so cool. And that mana whenua are leading that charge in so many parts of the country. Te Urewera, Whanganui River, Te Awa Tupua, Taranaki Maunga, and now you can just feel it in Fletcher's kōrero this morning here on Aotea. It's happening, eh? The spiral down is turning into a spiral up, and that's something we can all be really proud of. This is the Whanganui River. This is something that I hear a lot, and the people I work with down there. Ko Aotearoa, ko Aotearoa, ko I am the river, and the river is me, and that's what we've got to feel it if we want to be good at this stuff. Connection. It's all about connection. Our surviving wildlife will struggle if we don't look after them. That's just a fact. And all of these things are still around. Man, it was so cool to be at Brett and Joe's place last night to hear all the kapaka wheeling around. My mentors in the Forest Service in the Kaimanawas talk about seeing flocks of 25 kaka in the Kaimanawas in the 60s and 70s. I started in the 80s, and the most I've ever seen is 5. And when Leonard Cocaine went from Tauranga to Rotorua through the back road in 1908, he reported flocks of 200. And the guides had a call bird in a cage, and they'd just give it a poke and it would squawk. And the kako would come in and they'd just go, yeah, one for Cam, one for Anya, one's for Brett. That was the abundance that was there. It's not there anymore because of predation and competition from introduced predators. So if we want this stuff to survive, we've got to do the mahi. And Tūmaitonga is about that. These are some of the key threats that you've got on Aotea, and it's so good to see the pest trapping and predator management getting better and sharper, learning all the time. These are your key targets. But it's really important to know your predator. And as a wildlife ecologist, one of my real, superpowers, if you like, is understanding how these animals operate in their environment. Every single one of these is different, and you have to approach them differently. There's a lot of tools in the predator management toolkit. All of them have advantages, all of them have limitations, and all of them have consequences. And as much as I'd like to think we'll get to predator-free 2050, there's no silver bullet right now. It hasn't been invented. It's looking a long way off right now. But it doesn't mean that we can't be predator impact free. As Fletcher said, if you can get your rats down under 5%, you can have kokako back. It's about suppression and doing a really good job. But overused tools get blunt because animals adapt to us. So we've got to keep changing it up, being smarter, getting smarter. As they adapt to us, we've got to change, and then they'll adapt, and we've got to change. We're in this behavioural battle, this ongoing behavioural battle as we try and suppress the numbers to protect our tonga. And it's about using the right tool in the right place and doing it properly. I've done a lot of work with Auckland Parks community groups in the last year or so, and what's blown me away is how they just think all rats are the same. Rats are rat. And so many of them are setting traps that are good for ship rats, but in urban environments, Norway rats can get to 600 grams, and they've got a lot of sprung empty traps with a little bit of rat fur in it, and a big do not enter sign in the brains of the surviving rats. So we've got to be really careful about this. We've got to understand how each animal operates at place, how they use the environment, and what tools are appropriate and what tools are not. We've got to understand home ranges, breeding rates, dispersal, timing and distance. All of these are different, and we've got to take a bespoke approach to each of these. Rats are the classic example. Ship rats and Norway rats, they're two of your key targets here. They're very different animals. They behave differently, they have different bait preferences, and you've got to use different tools. There's not much point taking a .22 rifle to the field and Wapiti area to shoot a wapiti bull in the vehicle, because you won't kill them. And this is what so many people are doing with these ship rat focused tools that they're using on Norway rats. So I just want to quickly go through some of the behaviors and the differences between these two species, because it highlights how different they are and how our connection to them as a species makes us a better trapper, because we understand them better and we do a better job. So ship rats are highly exploratory. They're very arboreal. They live in a three-dimensional environment. They're just as happy up in the epiphytes at 20 meters up as they are on the ground. Highly nocturnal. They have this neophobia thing, the caution inquisitive, the yin and yang balance, the honey and puna, the north and south, the black and white, the male and female. Caution is what keeps them safe. Inquisitive is what makes them vulnerable to you as a trapper. So we've got to work on how that works. They live as mostly individuals. Mum will have 5 or 6 or 7 babies, but generally ship rats live as individuals. Scent's really important for communicating feeding opportunities. Their food preferences, seeds, fruits, sugars, starches, but protein seasonally when they're breeding. So yes, they do attack birds, but primarily they're driven by seeds and fruits, sugars and starches. They have a 3D home range which is less than a hectare. So your device density has to account for that kind of home range. But home range expansion can happen significantly as you push numbers down. I was the project manager for the Maungatautari project in the early 2000s, where there's a 47-kilometre pest-proof fence around a beautiful mountain covered in temperate rainforest jungle in the Waikato. There's kakapo back there now, which is kind of cool. There's so many kiwi there that they have to take 500 off each year to keep enough space. And that's only after 20 years. But the last rat that we took off the southern enclosure at Pukeatua was operating over 16 hectares. So living in the lolly jar is only so much fun until you get lonely. You go looking for buddies. So this social interaction food thing becomes really important. And a shiprat's usually less than 200 grams. Contrast that with the big Norway rats, highly exploratory. They don't climb very well. So if you stick your trap up in a tree, you won't catch a Norway rat. They're living mostly around your streams, your creeks, your estuaries, your wetlands. They're water rats, Norway rats, brown rats, water rats. That's the same name for the same critter. Far less arboreal, not as nocturnal, but still highly neophobic, scared of new things. You have to win their confidence. Living in colonies. When you've got a Norway rat colony, you could catch 30 Norway rats before your trap catch slows down, because they're down in the labyrinth of caves all along your waterways. And so what happens to one Norway rat when it encounters you and has a negative experience, he goes back to his mates and say, "Ray, don't touch the balloon to him. It's not good. I've got a really sore nose." Their bait preferences: meats, fats, oils, proteins. They are far more carnivorous, but yes, they still go for sugars and starches. Home range 6 hectares. So in terms of device placement, you can spread out your devices far more in your Norway rat habitat around your waterways and still have an effect. This is the smarter, not harder thing. 600 grams, 3 times bigger than a shiprat. So if you have a tiny entrance hole in your box, and you have a weak spring on your trap, it's no wonder that if the Norway rat can get in there, he gets your trap and he pulls it right to the front of the box and he pushes himself out and he goes away and tells all his mates not to touch the peanut butter and never come back to your trap. So I hear in the Auckland Parks community groups, we get a few sprung empties, but we don't catch any rats. There can't be any there. Put a trail camera out and see how many you've scared and who are now trap shy that you're going to really struggle to remove. So, our role as trappers is to really connect to these animals at place. And when I say at place, you don't farm cattle in Central Otago the same as you farm cattle at or Kiwi on Aotea. They're the same species, but they're living in a different environment. So you've got to consider the place, animals at place. So what you guys do here is about your observation, your connection to here and how animals operate here. Other thing about Norway rats is they cache. So if you put a bait station out full of yummy treats, they'll come and they'll clean the whole lot out and they'll put it in their cave for a later date. So you think, oh, you must have killed heaps, all the bait's gone. Yeah, maybe not. Test every assumption, eh? That's where trail cameras are really good. The same rate comes back 50 times and takes a bait every time, and suddenly your 50 baits are all gone. You go, whoa, must have killed heaps. They're all rotting under the bank of the creek.
We don't have those on.
You don't have Norways? Yay. You have Chorley though, eh?
Before I do an insight into trap New Zealand, we all have a heart attack. We don't have Norway rats.
Beautiful.
We do it just Madeline.
Beautiful. But they do in the Auckland Parks. And mostly they have Norway rats and mostly they set shipwreck devices. So yeah, I guess that's my point, is to connect to the animals you're chasing. You have these beautiful little kiore, and I engaged a lot with them when I was on Aotea. They have a completely different set of behaviours because they're different animals. And yeah, I'm not sure whether you target them here. It's nice to hear that they're still here. They probably have quite a consequence, but not so much on Kaikoura Island that you can't release kiwi. So that's kind of encouraging. Much smaller home ranges. Kiore eradications fail because we don't consider how small their home range is and we don't put enough devices out or enough baits out. Generally, that's one of the issues for kiore eradication. Shiprats, many of you use all these kind of devices. For bigger rats, I do a hack on my Victors that increases the spring tension and increases the shear force on the bait plate. So my big Norways coming out of my swamp at home, when they come into the back of my trap, they stay at the back of the trap. They don't pull the trap right to the front of the box again. So just little things. That's the kind of different. That's a size 12 croc. So this is a 600 gram Noya rat versus a little shiprat. So yeah, this is the kind of thing you've got to understand. You might see a difference between shiprats and Kiori, a bit similar. So you got to use the right tool in the right place. And I know you fellas have a bit to do with Marcus King and his team at Track Tools. So yeah, I'm really impressed with the innovation that's coming along in the industry to improve what we're doing. When you're after feral cats, it becomes next level. They're so cunning. Feral cat behaviour is very cautious. They're very hard to remove. One trap interaction, they'll never come near you again. But some cats just won't come near you, no matter what you put in. Even some of this new cat attractant is, while it's exciting, he's still hard to get him in a trap. That's why I use a lot of trail camera imaging. I'm always looking at how my pests interact with my devices, and it teaches me why I don't catch them. I have this saying that it's not how many tails hanging on the fence that's important, it's how many tails are still in the bush alive doing the damage. It's the ones you didn't get and why you didn't get them that really count, because they are the genesis of the next generation, and they're the ones whose behaviour is going to be embedded in future generations. So you need to learn about the ones you don't catch. And trail cameras are really good. In terms of working out who's there, meat baits in cages or wire mesh pinned to the ground with a trail camera on them. Everybody in the hood turns up for a look at some stage, so you get to learn who's there. And often it's a long game. Doesn't matter what sort of trap you put out there. There'll be critters that beat you, and when you use a trail camera, you see how many you're not getting, and that's the most important thing. If you turn up once a month to look at your trap and there's still nothing in it, doesn't mean they're not there, eh? Any cool examples there. Tabby cat looking in a DOT 200 with a rat won't go in the cage trap. This guy here won't go in the Steve Allen chimney box trap. But happy to eat all the free food on the outside. This is how you learn about the target species. That's actually the same animal. That guy there is that guy there. We did get him eventually. He had no teeth, a big old ginger Tom. So sometimes it can be about patience. Sorry about that, it's a bit gory. Sometimes you've got to just ninja it up. And I love these double entrance cage straps for all sorts of critters. That's the level of trapping ninja you got to be to catch some of these critters. You've got to really do a good job. It's my neighbour's cat. I have to let it go. I took it back to Sharon and she said, "Oh, you naughty cat, your kittens have been missing you." So anyway, sometimes dogs and firearms are the only way to deal with hard to get cats. And pigs over here, they're a resource as well as a consequence. And this is really important in communities like this. I'm a deer hunter. I actually like my deer, but as an ecologist, I see the impact that deer can have. So some of these animals have value and consequence, and we've got to try and understand how we balance that out. We have a lot of problems with pigs at home, eating the possums that get caught in our devices. They tend to be pretty nomadic, but they're highly productive when there's a big fruit crop, or you do a big possum run and you kill a whole lot of possums or goats and you provide a whole lot of carrion. Pig populations can boom and they can interfere terribly with your devices. There's limited management tools, but dogs and hunters are a blooming good tool because they may not get them all, but they'll peel a few off the back of the mob and they'll push the mob on. And if the pigs keep moving, then no one place gets all the damage. So hunters are a really important part of the conservation outcomes where pigs occur. And I'm sure it's no different here. Having a pig hunting competition is a really cool idea. It's got to be sow focused though, eh? This catching a sow and letting the sows go. It's kind of counterintuitive. Biggest boar shouldn't be the prize in your pig hunting competition. I'd go for biggest sow. and the pig hunters here might not agree, but yeah, pigs have a consequence and they have a value, and we've got to try and balance that out. Mast ears, you probably have mast ears here. We certainly do in the Central North Island. Beach mast last year, Aotea mast last year, unbelievable forest production. It's so important for our Tonga species. You know, the kakapo are breeding this year because of the rimu mast. Biggest breeding year since kakapo conservation happened. There's over 100 kakapo chicks this year. 100 new kakapo chicks, almost unbelievable, really. Credit to the team, and that's because of the fruit. This is the sort of kahikatea fruit abundance that we saw in the mega masts in 2019. But things like karamu and metal, that fuels a whole heap of production for our Tonga species, and that's how it always was. But now it also fuels production in our rodent species. And sometimes you just can't track enough to make a difference. That might look impressive for an A24. There's 7 or 8 shiprats under that. There's about another 10,000 shiprats still in that forest. It's not how many tails hanging on the fence that's important. It's how many tails are still out there doing the damage. For me, connection's also about connecting into Mother Nature and the rhythms of nature. Who knows what moon phase we're in at the moment? Yeah, tamatea. Yeah, rising, getting bigger and bigger and bigger every day. Yeah. How many of us plant our gardens by the moon? Yeah. How many of us go fishing by the moon? Hell yeah. Yeah. How many of us plan our trip into the Kaimanawas for the raw by the moon? Hell yeah. How many of us track by the moon? Hell yeah. The thickest. No? This is an ancient knowledge system based around those energy levels that flow through nature based on that 30-day lunar cycle. From Whittle to Te Nui, back to Whittle. It's ancient knowledge. It's kept Indigenous cultures thriving. Understanding of how nature operates off this system has kept Indigenous cultures thriving for millennia. It's about intuitive observation and connection to place, connection to whenua, your umbilical cord to Papatuanuku, to Mother Earth, use of ancient knowledge and this concept of maramataka. And I'm not a maramataka expert, but as an ecologist and as a hunter, I've always seen these patterns. And I'll just explain this graph. What I've tried to do here is I've tried to express an annual rhythm and monthly rhythm. So the yellow line is nature pauses in winter, and then she breathes in through spring, and in summer, autumn, she breathes out her abundance, and then she pauses again. That's her breath, the annual breath of nature. And for every breath of nature, there's 13 heartbeats. Boom, 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 boom. This is the 30-day lunar cycle, and every day in that 30 days, there's a different energy. It's very low, it's Whittle, and the new moon, and it rises through tamatea, which is a period of uncertainty and a bit of anxiousness. It peaks, the energy peaks in Te Nui on the full moon, and then it starts to decline, and then things start to chill again, and you get into a period called tangaro, 5 days of the month, week after full moon, and it's the time where fishing and eeling and hunting is at its absolute best because the critters are chill. As a night shooter, I used to shine my spotlight around on a new moon, and there'd be just nothing out there. It's just dead as a dodo. And then as tamatea rolled through, you'd shine your spotlight around, and they're really shy, and they wouldn't look in the light. And then you'd shine it on a full moon, and there are critters bouncing around everywhere, nothing will hold in the light. And then as Tangaroa rolls around, they all just sit there. Profound changes in animal behavior as you go through the cycle. So if you set your trap, you service your trap line the day or so before Tangaroa, you're going to get way more catches. It's as simple as that. And I have 18 traps on my 5 acres, and I check them every day, and I record the catches in my diary. And I catch twice as many on Tangaroa as I do on Whittle or tamatea. I still catch a lot on a full moon, but I catch the most in Tangaroa. And if it rains during Tangaroa, it gets even better. Just straight after rain is how you catch rats. So, this is ancient knowledge. Matariki is about when nature pauses, people pause. They take stock. They consider what's happened in the last 12 months, who's passed on, what contribution they made, what we learned, what went well, what didn't go well. How do we up the game for next year to thrive even better? That's what Matariki is all about. It's a time of sharing knowledge and getting better and making better versions of ourselves. So just to sum it up, everything is connected. On this planet, this living, beautiful blue living cell in the universe, everything is connected. We're all part of one living system. Understanding the connection to animals at place for you as people are trying to get taonga back is a critical part of success. Using that ancient knowledge and the knowledge of those rhythms of nature is really important. Playing the long game and using tools that help you understand what's going on. By understanding your environment better, you'll win the battle. And we will have a better place. The spiral down will turn into a spiral up. That's where my spiritual homeland is. This is the central Kaimanawa range. There used to be seabirds all over there, and now it's crumbling. Too many deer, too many stoats, too many rats, no seabirds, no nutrient re-establishment, and the forests are dying. And I've learned about the system in 40 years of being a part of it and connecting to it. My whakatauki is ko te tai te kura. The environment is the place of learning. And if you have open mind, open eyes, open heart, you'll be really good at what you do. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for the invitation, Joe. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Kia ora.